Hello, everyone. Welcome to this very interesting session where we will be talking about a commodity which everyone is currently discussing while they're doing it across India, East Africa, Canada, Australia, and to a certain extent, even in CIS countries as well as Ukraine. Pulses. Pulses are a very important commodity. We all know that India is a giant player when it comes to pulses. A very simple reason is that close to one-fourth of world's pulses are produced in India. Close to 30% are consumed in India. And India is a key player when it comes to pulses trade. And when we say pulses trade, India is predominantly an importer of pulses. This year, it has become more important to talk about pulses for a very simple reason that we are having a year which is an El Nino year. And El Nino generally does not just have impact on one season, which is when we say 26-27 Kharif season, but also would have impact on two more seasons. That is what is anticipated. And this year, the El Nino is called Super El Nino as well, because the temperature in the El Nino region, which is typically between the South and North America and on the right side and Pacific on the left side, has been highest ever recorded for that area. Now, El Nino sometimes create challenges for some of the continents, while it also gives a challenge in form of lack of rainfall in some of the regions and also create heavy rainfall in other regions. Now, when we see typically the Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, moving towards Japan, and even Southeast Asia, El Nino will have a huge impact because it will suck out predominantly a substantial part of rainfall itself. Moving further towards west, this is the season of monsoon in India. And as I said, India is a key player, or I'll say dominant player when it comes to pulses. And we are already seeing the June rainfall was not that great, and July was better than June, definitely. Still a little deficit was there. But August and September, where we see the real impact of El Nino to be unfolding on Indian subcontinent, are estimated to be not that great. Now, definitely a lot of people have a different opinion on after seeing what has happened in July. I would like to put on record the fact that El Nino is not that there would not be any rainfall. El Nino is a phenomena where it reduces the overall rainfall spread across the monsoon season. Secondly, it makes monsoon having huge inconsistency, where suddenly you'll have long dry bout spell of 8 days, 10 days when rainfall is not there. And then suddenly you'll have a deluge. And we have of late seen that happening in multiple parts of India. We are also seeing challenges where while you see pan-India averages, still it is 14% below the long-term average. But inconsistency in peninsular India, where it has been deficit between 25 to 30%, or towards northeast part of India, where again deficit is pretty high. Central India, Western India is, I would say, a little bit better than these two other regions. 50% of Indian districts are having deficit or large deficits. So all of that would be definitely playing its own role. But today's session is not about meteorology. So I would move beyond the weather phenomena. But to set the context, you'll find that we are seeing the weather patterns impacting global agriculture commodities in a severe manner. We are already seeing heat waves across Europe. We have seen heat domes in North America, specifically United States. We have seen challenges also in certain part of because of high heat in South America. Africa, again, we are seeing inconsistency when it comes to the late rains, which are required for pulses growth in East Africa. And Australia is as close to drought as it can be. So for pulses, you'll find that South America, you'll have better productivity of pulses. Going up North America, you'll find it would be better than, I would say less than South America. The consistency would be less than South America, but still not as bad as when we look at the Eastern Hemisphere. Canada will do well, specifically when it comes to lentils. They might not be growing sufficient amount of yellow peas, but lentils looks good. Same is with USA. Again, we'll find that beans and lentils are going to do better in North America. Europe, mixed. We would not be seeing great pulses, but you'll find that Ukraine would be, or Turkey, Ukraine, these regions would have a decent productivity or maybe better than the previous year's productivity. The challenge comes to the wheat pulses bowl of the world, that is South and Southeast Asia, predominantly when we talk about India and Myanmar, and also to Pacific, Australia. Australia would be producing far less amount of desi chickpea this year, for sure. East Africa also, we have seen that though it might not be because of El Nino, because El Nino sets in a little bit later than the sowing and the crop formation stage in East Africa, which is predominant player when it comes to pulses. So there we found that because of previous issues, including flooding in Mozambique or lesser rainfall in northern Tanzania, you find overall availability of pulses in Africa for export, specifically when we talk about Pigeon pea, would be lower than anticipated. Now, with that, let me straight away get into the presentation and let's talk about how things are going to be shaping going forward. So first of all, let's talk about the global outlook of pulses. And again, welcome to the supply and demand release of Know Your Commodities estimates on pulses. Let's see the broader picture. So when we talk about the global pulses production trends, so of late we have seen since 2000, even before that, like, though we are covering in this, I would say, table 2000 onwards, you'll find that global production has been increasing consistently. And that consistency you find till 2025. There was a little bit of challenge where there was a dip, which is not shown here because that year has not been shown here in 2023, where we found there was little bit dip because of predominantly in 2022-2023 season in India and 2023-2024 season in India, there were challenges in pulses production in India, which, as I said, is a large production house. So moving to 2025, we had the global production of roughly 93 million metric ton. India contributed close to 25.2 million metric ton out of that. Global trade was 22.6 million metric ton, and Indian imports were close to 5.9 million metric tons. 2026, we are seeing that there would be dip in production of pulses because of the reason I shared, the climatical issues, which happened earlier in Africa and now unfolding in Asia and Pacific region. So we are looking at 91.5 million metric ton production of pulses in 2026. Indian production, as I said, it is going to be having a serious dip. We'll be at 23.8 million metric tons. And the global trade would be 24 million metric tons. And India's import is estimated to be close to 7.3 million metric tons, which actually is similar to what happened in 2024. Now, what is interesting here is that while we are seeing that there is a significant dip in India, still the global production number also have gone down, but the global trade has increased. One of the reasons is that because when in origin you have climatical issues, and in the key destinations, when you don't have production, you find because of the higher pricing and I would say the market being more receptive to import, some of the pulses which are used in feed are moved to those destinations. That is where you saw that in 2023-24, India imported huge amount of yellow peas, a part of which predominantly is being used in feed in many of the countries in Europe. But because the realization was better for Canadian exporters or Russian exporters, they ended up exporting that to India rather than to other markets which are using these pulses as feed or for plant extraction or protein extraction. So you find the 2026 also phenomena repeating. When India imports more, you find that global trade also increasing. Now, if we look at the global production in 2030 and 2035, again, we are seeing that the trend of increase in pulses production is going to continue. So increase in pulses production is a phenomena which is good to know that it's happening currently as we talk. It is continuing to happen, but yes, we will have challenges related to weather. And unfortunately for 2026, 27 and 27, 28 or 2026 is calendar year and 2027 is calendar year, we see the shortages of agriculture commodities across the board. It's just not pulses. So we have already seen that there is a dip in production of wheat in Europe. We are seeing the challenges of wheat production in Australia. We are similarly seeing the challenges of possibility of rice production in many of the Southeast Asian countries. So you'll find that across the board, we will be having lesser production of grains, pulses, and oilseed in 2026, 27 calendar years. And that is also is extrapolated to pulses as well. So now let's look at the India's import basket. While I've shared data from 2022-23 onwards, let's focus more on 2025-26 and 2026-27. Now, this is also a nuanced thing which you'll have to understand. When we'll be talking about the global numbers, we'll be talking about calendar years. And when we'll be talking about India, we'll be talking about the typically marketing year, which, for example, 2025-26. While when we are talking about global, we are talking about the calendar year, because marketing year in different origins and destinations are different globally. So we have used calendar year in case of global numbers. Now, in 2025-26, if you see that we had a dip in import of yellow pulses, then when compared to 24-25, that is again going to change, and we'll see sudden rise in import of yellow peas again, because that is only the pulses which would be readily available going forward. Because we are going to be seeing as we move forward that there would be dip in majority of other pulses production across the globe. So when we see 25-26, as I said, yellow peas, there was a reduction, but again, 2026-27, we'll see re-emergence of yellow peas. Desi chickpea, we'll again see there would be a higher import, while in 2025-26, it reduced again as compared to 24-25. But we'll see that in 2026-27, marginal increase of desi chickpea import is going to happen. Lentils, again, the story is that, like, we'll be importing, we have imported lower than 24-25 in 25-26. But in 26-27, because the global availability would be enormous, coming from both Canada as well as Australia, where the lentil production is supposed to be pretty robust. And that is one of the substitute you'll find to some of the other pulses which are currently constrained when it comes to their production. Black Mape, again, you see that India has been consistently increasing the imports of two pulses. One is Black Mape and second is Pigeon pea. So from 2022-23 onwards, from 6 lakhs metric ton or 0.6 million metric ton, 25-26, we imported close to 1 million metric tons of Black Mape. Pigeon pea also from 0.7 million metric ton, we imported close to 1.48 million metric ton in 2025-26. Going forward, we'll find that import of Pigeon pea would reduce as well as for Black Mape for a very simple reason, availability being not there. We would not have sufficient amount of Pigeon peas available across the globe, and hence you'll find that there would be a taper in overall imports of Pigeon pea to India, as well as same is with the Urad. in Urad, you'll find that import Urad or black mape, you'll find that import will not reduce substantially, but uh, close to 0.05 million metric ton reduction. The best part with black mape is that we are having an alternative origin developing in form of Brazil, which is going to put a substantial part of deficit which we'll see in Myanmar. But at the same time, it is yet to see that will Brazil be economically viable enough, would have sufficient availability and the acceptability in the local market for the type of crop they will be coming out. So again, Brazil is, I would say, $1 million question, still unanswered. But assuming that it goes well, we'll be importing 1 million metric tons of black mape in 2026-27 and close to 1.2 million metric ton of pigeon pea in 26-27 and 2.4 million metric ton of yellow peas, 1.1 million metric ton of desi chickpea, and 1.4 million metric ton of lentils. So overall scenario is that we'll be importing 7.3 million metric ton of pulses in 26-27. Now, what is important to note here is that unlike in past, where we reacted, right? So 2022-23, we have just imported roughly 2.2 million metric tons of pulses. And then we had a serious dip in pulses productivity, which led to a huge outbreak of prices in majority of pulses. And that is where we started seeing that in 2023, towards the end, the government had to allow the duty-free import of yellow peas, which eventually led to cooling of the market, but also led to a lot of flooding of Indian market with yellow peas, leading to 7.1 million metric tons of import in 24-25. 26-27, both the government, traders, markets, and everybody is already aware about the situation unfolding. And rather than being reactive to it, right, we are already seeing an opportunity where there would be a possibility of structural imports, strategic imports to India of all key pulses, whichever is available. Because as I said, El Nino is not just one season phenomena, it is 3 season phenomena. So it's always better to have availability, which ensure affordability for the end user, rather than have a scenario where we have what has happened in 22-23. And I think by understanding what government has been doing, they have been doing excellent job after 22-23. They would have learned their lessons from 2015 and 2022-23. Now let's talk about one of the most hotly debated, discussed commodity of pulses basket. Let's talk about pigeon pea. Now we all know that pigeon pea, also known as tuar in India, is a pretty interesting crop, right? It is a crop which creates a lot of emotions as well among the people and especially the trading markets. For a very simple reason that actually, we are having very limited import origins. Predominantly Myanmar happens to be one of them, and then east of Africa. So when we talk about the global numbers, again, it's very interesting numbers coming out. Because of lower production in India in 2022-23 season, we found that the ending stock dipped substantially when it comes to 2022 itself. So starting from 0.35 million metric tons as ending stocks in 2022, we have seen that the ending stock carry has been increasing consistently as we move forward. So if you see that in 2025, we had carry of close to 1 million metric ton, which swelled to 1.61 million metric ton in 2026. And one of the reason is that Indian government has been procuring and holding good amount of stock of pigeon pea with them. So if you see that out of this 1.61 million metric ton of carry, a substantial amount of that is with the government of India. Now, when carry is good, supply is good. And that is what we have seen that again, you'll see that except 2023, there have been increase in supply as we move forward. So from 4.77 million metric ton in 2024 to roughly 5.62 million metric ton in 2026. It is going to dip again because as we'll see that the production numbers of tuar in India are not that great. So in 2027, you'll again find there would be a dip in supply to close to 5.21 million metric ton. Consumption also, it is directly related to the price of pigeon pea. So when in 2022, 23 and 23, 24 season, earlier part of 23, 24 season, when the pigeon pea prices were record high, we have seen that there has substitution which has happened towards yellow pea, especially after the opening up of imports of yellow pea. We have seen that a lot of shift has happened from Horeca sector and the typically the food vendor sector where they moved to yellow peas as a substitute to pigeon pea. So there was a huge dip in consumption in 2023, predominantly led by India globally. And if you see that after that, we have seen sign of recovery in past 2 years. But unfortunately, this year again, we are having a little bit of challenge, and you'll find again a consumption dip happening. We have seen that whenever in Indian market, because again, pigeon pea is predominantly consumed by Indians in India and Indians outside India. So for Indians within India, if we have seen that the tuar dal prices increase beyond 180 rupees, there is a huge dip suddenly in the affordability and hence the consumption. So till that level, you won't find too much of substitution. But eventually, when that happens, there is a huge reduction in the consumption. We are anticipating in 2026, global consumption would be roughly 4.01, and in 2027, 4.01. So ending stock would be again lower than what it was in 2026 and 27 to 1.2 millimeter. But 2026 year, we'll end up with a decent ending stock of 1.61 million metric ton, which is higher than what it was in 2025. Now that makes interesting because global numbers and Indian numbers actually here, they are in a little bit of opposite direction. So when we talk about 2025-26, which was the last season in India, we had again, we have seen that in 2024-25 and 25-26, production of pigeon pea has been flat 3.2 million metric ton. And this is to give you perspective. India used to have production of close to 3.8 to 4 million metric tons of pigeon pea before 2022-2023 season. And from there, we have seen the dip in 2022-23 to 2.9 million metric tons, 23-24 to 2.7 million metric tons. Recovery in 24-25 and 25-26. But in 2026-27, again, we are seeing a huge dip. So we are anticipating that the production of pigeon pea in India would be roughly 2.5 million metric tons. And when we say that, that means what we are saying is that we'll be having 0.7 million metric ton of lower production than the previous year. I would always request the people who have been seeing the supply and demand number, please go with the deltas, because each organization, whether it is government, private players, they have different ways of analyzing the productivity. Some of them, they take care of total production. Some of them take only tradable surplus, minus seed, minus farmers' own usage. Some of them, they have a different way of even estimating those numbers. So here the deltas becomes more important than rather than the actual number. So our production number, though in 2025-26, our initial estimate was lower than 3 million metric ton, but we updated it with 3.2 million metric ton, upside of roughly 0.25 million metric ton than where we started in August in 2025-26. So we, I would say, increase the final estimate of our production in 2025-26 by roughly 0.25 million metric ton. In 2026-27, we see it dip to 2.5 million metric ton. Now that dip can be a little bit harsher. This is our, I would say, optimistic number as of now. We are assuming that August and September would be bad, but would not be a disaster when it comes to the impact of El Nino itself. Also important to note here is that there is already roughly 9% as per the government data itself, reduction in the total sowing of tuar. A good part about tuar is that actually it is a long crop. They have deep root formation, and when they have deep root formation, it makes them tolerant to drought. That's a good quality which they are having. Just like even lentils, you'll find that actually they are having good tolerance when it comes to I would say weather phenomena. Specifically when it comes to moisture. But yes, they react very badly. Lentils react very badly because of the heat, right? So, but pigeon pea, you'll find predominantly it is having pretty hardy crop when it comes to both soil moisture as well as when it is about the temperature it's also. However, what we have seen in the major production centers, predominantly all the way from Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, and moving towards Maharashtra and to up north towards west in MP and Gujarat, we see serious deficits happening. We don't see too much dip happening in Uttar Pradesh because they go for a very long variety, which is predominantly, as I said, far more hardy than the varieties being grown in Karnataka or Maharashtra or even in Gujarat. So you'll find a serious dip in production in these states. And in Uttar Pradesh, we are seeing that, even delayed sowing, which has happened, is not going to impact hugely the overall productivity. Now, late sowing is a big enemy of pulses, specifically when it comes to pigeon pea. So we have seen that suboptimal sowing of pigeon pea has happened in multiple parts of Vidarbha, specifically, as I said, in Maharashtra. We have seen that Karnataka also, there have been a substantial reduction in sowing, as well as the initial germination has not happened. And I don't think the farmers are going to be going for re-sowing. So overall condition when it comes to production in India, as I said, we are being optimistic, we are looking at 0.7 million metric tons of shortages there. Imports, we will be importing roughly 1.2 million metric tons in 26-27. Now, from where all these imports are going to come? Substantial part of that import is going to be coming from Mozambique and Myanmar. So Myanmar, again, El Nino impact is there. We are seeing at least 50,000 tons of reduction in imports of tuar coming from Myanmar in 2026-27 season. Again, I'm not talking about the previous year, 25-26, right, which is already, I would say, that on verge of ending. I'm saying 26-27 season, we'll be seeing typically, Myanmar would be having shortages where they predominantly start exporting on November onwards. And you'll find that the 50,000 metric ton shortages when overall imports coming from Myanmar. East Africa. So East Africa has played a very important role last year in 25-26, exporting close to 1.2 million metric tons. Out of the 1.48 number you are seeing, 1.2 came from East Africa. And that number is going to reduce drastically. And we are anticipating 0.8 to 0.9 million metric ton only coming as imports from East Africa. So overall, Kitty, if you see that, you're looking at 1.1 to 1.2 million metric tons of import in 2026-27. We have kept it on an optimistic level of 1.2 million metric tons. So overall supply situation, does it look very bad in 2026-27? It looked tight, but it does not look bad at all, right? So that's why in previous engagement, I've said that tuar is firm, possible breakout. But that breakout doesn't mean that tuar would be touching the prices of 2023, 23, 24, crossing 138, right? I think that is what happened in Akola of Desi. We are not seeing those type of increase in the prices. But yes, it is having a very strong firm tone, and it is on a level where there is a possibility of breakout because the overall supply and demand is tight when it comes to tuar. Consumption, we have kept it as much as last year. We are not showing any demand destruction, as we would be talking about the next pulse, where we have also possibility of seeing demand destruction because of non-availability. You cannot eat something which you don't have, right? Tuar availability would be there. Only thing is that because of tightness of supply and demand, you might see a firmness on prices there. And already we know that the government has also increased substantially the MSP of in India of pigeon pea. As well as next crop, we'll be talking about Urad. So here I would say that firmness, breakout possibility, but will it be flying as what it did in 2023, 2022, 23, and early part of 2023? I don't think that's gonna be happening. It would be firm, but it will be, I would say, there would be a cap on it. Also, we all know that government still holds a decent amount of stock, which predominantly they are already liquidating a part of it through OTRs. But again, government is having a decent amount of stock. And the best thing is that government has learned their lesson and they have handled the pulses sector from 2020, 22, 23, 24 onwards pretty decently. Now let's come to the next crop. Black Mape, Urad, Black Gram. So these are typical names. Now this is where we see a serious challenge, right? When it comes to supply and demand, this is, I would see it as a mess, right? This is a mess in front of me because if you see, there is a consistent decrease in carry since 2020-22. So from 0.4 million metric tons, we have ended 2025 at 0.11 million metric tons itself. Now that's not a great number. So overall, if you see that Black Mape, we have seen consistently dip in carry. We have seen consistent dip except an outlier year of 2023 where there was production jump. But again, the production is also tapering down. Even though when we are saying that there is an addition of another origin, which is Brazil, but the numbers reflect differently. The production is down, carry is down. Global trade has increased. Why the reason global trade has increased? Because again, as I said, that India only consumes Urad. Indians and Indians outside India predominantly consume most of the Urad. Very limited amount of Urad goes to other destinations. Now, this is where you'll find that when there is a dip in production in India, the global trade increase, and we have seen that dip happening consistently across multiple years. So if you see on the supply side, serious shortages. So supply is looking at 2.78 million metric ton, production of 2.73 million metric ton. So consumption of 2.74 million metric ton, which is again also is going down because when you have reduced availability, you have reduced consumption as well. And that's where you see that the balance of roughly like 0.04 million metric tons is ending stock. Urad, I would say is going to be a big challenge, and not just for the trader community, but also for the government, because it is just waiting for a trigger. I hope that trigger doesn't happen. And another reality of Urad is that you don't have substitutes. For Pigeon pea and Desi chickpea, you have substitute in form of yellow peas. Urad, only thing is that possibility of demand destruction, right? Where you stop eating your medu vadas and idlis. And again, southern part of India, they do not substitute too easily. So again, this is an interesting, Urad would be an interesting phenomena for this year. Now let's come to India. Urad India, you see dip in the carry, which reflects on global numbers as well, because as I said, like, it is predominantly India game. Tuar and Urad are predominantly India game. So carry is substantially low in 2026-27. Start ending stock is at nothing, right? I have to write 0.01 because, like, we have to reduce, in fact, the consumption to that we have some ending stock. So consumption at 2.57 reduced by roughly 0.2 million metric tons as compared to previous year. And supply, serious shortages, right? Again, 0.2 million metric tons short. One of the reason is that production reduction of Urad in 2026-27. Now, interesting aspect here, which we have to see, is that we are also optimistic that the Rabi Urad this time would be more than last year. For simple reason, we see a price increase leading to farmer growing it because Urad is a short duration crop. Secondly, Urad is also, as I was telling you, that pretty resilient when it comes to both moisture as well as we are seeing high temperatures forming in northern part of India. So you'll find that Urad, which is predominantly Andhra Pradesh or Karnataka or MP or Maharashtra sort of phenomena, moving towards eastern and northeastern part of India, right, towards East Europe, Uttar Pradesh, in follow of rice in Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, even to certain extent in Odisha. So we are seeing that this 70-30 ratio of Kharif versus Rabi for Urad might change. We are looking at last year, if you see that numbers, we were looking at close to 1.1 million metric tons, 1 to 1.1 million metric tons of production in Kharif. We are seeing it going to 0.8 million metric tons when it comes to 26-27 production. We see roughly 0.2 million metric tons to 0.3 million metric tons dip in production of Urad in 26, 27 Kharif season. We might see, as I said, like, we are trying to be optimistic. We are seeing that in Rabi, because of the prices, you'll have higher sowing. And there is a lot of talk about, like, there is higher sowing of Urad in India. Yes, there is, as per government data, 8 to 9% increase in the sowing of Urad, Kharif Urad. But is it sown in optimal manner? Answer is definitely no. Urad is very sensitive to pests, right? So farmer, if they have no solution, if they were not able to grow tuar, if they were not able to grow long duration crops, they end up growing Urad because it is, as I said, it's a short duration crop. But that leads to severe decline in yields. The varieties which are pretty short duration, they are actually, like, hardly giving yields of 450 to 500 kgs per hectare. So we are seeing those increase in sowing numbers having uh, I would say some impact to ensure that actually, like, the dip is not that bad, but we are seeing a serious dip when it comes to Urad. So as I said, consumption, we have to taper it because availability supply is itself 2.59 million metric tons. So you cannot eat more than actually what you have as a supply. So consumption ends up to be 2.57 million metric tons. Export, I am saying that again, it is minuscule because actually Indian diaspora still import from India, and that's what make it 0.01 million metric ton. Coming to lentils, beautiful crop, because actually this is a crop which is showing a lot of promise. And we are seeing all the way from Australia to Canada. In fact, there would be, and even in US, you'll be having the lentils production to increase. North America, more of green lentils, which can also substitute to a certain extent. But when we talk about red lentils, which is a key crop, or Masoor, you'll find that the carry is good, production is good. Global trade is also increasing because you have larger production, and there would be some substitution happening, which I've said. Supply is 6.22 million metric tons, again, pretty decent. Consumption bound to increase because you are having more availability, and it is priced pretty well, whether it within India or outside India. So again, and again, this is where actually, like, the red lentils prices movement would be based on the overall basket. On its own, it is neither gonna be bullish or bearish. It will have tone of overall market. So we are not having huge amount of excess. At the same time, we are not having huge amount of shortages. So it is balanced, I would say. If I am having a problem of heart and I am a trader, this is the crop I would love to deal most of the time, because it will only give me money for my value addition rather than actually on the speculation. So beautiful crop coming up, Masoor. So again, very balanced. Now coming to India, this is a little bit of challenge. Production of Masoor is, again, it is too early because Rabi sowing has not even started. So this is, I would not say even estimate, it is a prediction. So take it with a pinch of salt. When I talk about desi chickpea or red lentils, see it as a, I would say, prediction, not even an estimate, right? I would not like to use term of one of my guru, Shri Atul Chaturvedi, guesstimate, but I would say that it is not even estimate. By generally we call it estimate because that is where the process is same. But I would say I would take it with a lot of pinch of salt. But we see substantial reduction in production of Masoor in India in 26, 27. Now, what is the reason for that? The reason is the overall, if you see the temperatures, right? El Nino leads to high temperature. Lentils are robust when it comes to moisture loss, but they are very pathetic when it comes to the heat stress. And across all those key places where actually it is being grown in India, there would be a serious heat challenge. While there was no El Nino, still we had seen there was a heat challenges last year because of climate change. And this year it will be more pronounced. It will be more pronounced for a very simple reason. The sea next door is 4 degrees hotter. And it is going to be having impact definitely on Indian winters as well. And this is why we see that there would be a shortage in production of Masoor. But we are having pretty decent carry of 0.45 million metric ton. Import, obviously, when our production goes down, we'll be importing more. We are looking at 1.4 million metric ton as our imports for 2026-27. Supply looks decent because availability is there for import. Consumption, I would say it is going to increase because we'll be having deficit of other two key commodity pulses consumed in India. And export, we hardly export. Again, it's 0.01. I would say that it's a pretty change in your pocket when it comes to export of pulses from India. It is just for predominantly for Indian diaspora in form of splits. Ending stock, lower than last year for sure. But again, situation doesn't look that bad. In fact, it will look pretty okay for very simple reason is that there is availability of imports. Now, let me address some of the people who always talk about India should not become quote unquote dumping ground of pulses. First of all, dumping means where you sell in a foreign market the product at a lower price than what you sell in your own market. That is not happening anywhere when it comes to pulses being exported to India. Yes, flooding of the market is a challenge which discourages Indian farmers. But at the same time, I think our consumption of pulses is far lower than what is the normative demand of pulses which we should be consuming in India. Having said that, if we are not able to sufficiently produce the pulses in India, rather than starve our kids of very important nutrient in form of protein, I would any day would see let us import. Our farmers are, except a couple of crops have been specifically Masoor and Chana, which are Rabi crop, they have been able to get decent remuneration closer or a little bit above MSP in last 2 seasons at least. And I would say if we have to compensate our farmers, there are ways and means. Government should become more aggressive in buying pulses, which they have already declared they will be doing it, and I think they will be doing more. But at the same time, let's not see what we are seeing in Urad, where the consumption shrinks. Let's not see what is happening in Tuar, where the consumption has shrunk. Let's consume as much pulses as possible. So I would say that, I would love that every possible grain of pulses which we consume in India is produced in India. But till then, if you have to import, let it be. Coming to chickpeas, desi chana, again, more of a prediction than estimates. While this prediction is also based on a very scientific analysis, again, you'll find that the global numbers doesn't look that bad. Right? We would have a dip of production, but very limited of 0.1 million metric ton. Global trade will reduce because India will import a little bit lesser. Coming to supply, again, supply is decent. Consumption, we see a little bit of dip because, as I said, like in India, when we'll be importing more of yellow peas, again, there would be some substitution of the chickpea flour or besan with yellow pea flour. Again, it is also called, unfortunately, though it should not be besan, but peely matar ka besan. So we see that there would be a possibility of substitution there as well if our Rabi season is not that great. But again, chana is pretty robust crop, and that is what you will be seeing, that we would not be seeing too much dip, right, in production of chana in 2026-27. While we have been hovering around 10 million metric ton mark on and off, right, depending on the weather, depending on various seasons. Chana again is a pretty robust and hardy crop. So even with the less of moisture and also a little bit of challenges of heat, we are not going to be seeing too much dip in both the sowing as well as the production of chana to start with. Heat is where we are seeing leading to a little bit of close to, I would say little bit, because in percentage term, like, roughly 8 to 10% decrease of productivity is possible in chana, taking it to 9.1 million metric ton. Imports, we are looking at 1.1 million metric ton. Now you see 25-26, we imported only a million metric ton of chana because we have predominantly in past have not even imported. 2022-23, we were not importing anything. It was opened up a little bit, and we had in 23-24, and we had roughly 0.15 million metric ton. So 24-25, we found the market flooded by imported chana because Australia grew a lot of it. Now, chana, another very interesting aspect we have to understand is that Australia would be only producing 50% of what they produced last year. So there would be a possibility of the price factor. And this is where it makes chana with the firm tone when it comes to the pricing part of it. So we see that chana would also be, will remain firm going forward, in pulses basket. Again, supply is pretty well off, not too much of worry. Consumption 10.6 million metric ton, and yes, we'll be having 500,000 metric ton of lower ending stock. So that gives supply and demand a little bit of tightness, but not which would be concerning us a lot. Government is also they came out with the open market selling of chana, but they have not too much of takers at that price. And going forward, I believe with government having again some buffers available with them. Chana is also not going to be looking at huge upside, but yes, still it is going to be firm. And we also expect that government to increase Rabi MSP substantially for Chana. Chana is the mainstay, and going forward, I see Chana also remaining firm. So if we talk about the commodities which we have touched today, Tuar, firm breakout, not huge upside. Supply and demand looking tight, but not, I would say, challenging. Urad, yes, one spark can take Urad to heights which, could be a little bit of challenge with government not having much of stocks to counter it. Should be seen very closely. I think government should be keeping all their lenses on Urad numbers. It's very important. Supply and demand side, I would say surely very tight, very tight. Uh, Going to Masoor, pretty comfortable, right? Global availability is there. Our own production would be less, but global availability will take care of it. Chickpeas, again, looks tight. Hence, pricing would be a little bit firm when it comes to India, but at the same time, not something which would be hugely be of a concern, both for trade as well as government. So overall, pulses basket, I see it having shortages leading to firmness, but only concern is of Urad. Rest of the, I would say, pulses basket, there are not too much of concerns as of now. And with that, we would like to end our estimates for supply and demand numbers for 26, 27 for pulses. Uh, I would like to thank all of you for your patient listening to the session. And I hope in case you have any question, I've already shared in my last slide our contact details. Please do contact us and we would try to answer whenever, wherever feasible to answer. And with that, I would go with a very strong message: consume more pulses. India need to consume more pulses. India need to ensure that our people are not just food secure, are nutrition secure also. So pulses first, protein first, India first. Thank you.